So today we're going to dive into education in New York State, which is a state that's known to spend a lot more on education than other states. The state budget for education in this state is around $25.73 billion for general support in public schools. In 2016, New York State records, on average, $22,593 per student, which is 87% higher than the national average. But it's important to note the wealth disparity in our state. So on average, richer and more affluent districts spend $23,000 per student, while lower income districts spend on average $17,200 per student. State aid for computer hardware and technology accumulated into $37.97 million, with an increase of $0.24 million, and 56% of teachers in high-poverty schools noted that their students' lack of access to technology was a challenge to them and most likely affected the students' quality of learning. So today we're going to interview an administrator, a teacher, and a student, all from Brewster High School, to get specifics on what education is really like in New York State. So let's start with the administrator. So what is Brewster High School's budget?
So our budget is $266,000, which is actually fairly small for a school our size.
So what areas does this money actually go towards?
So it goes towards all sorts of things, from paper clips to stationery to conferences to from professional development for teachers, textbooks and databases, things like that.
Okay, but this money doesn't actually go towards the Chromebooks, correct?
No, it does not. Our school actually received a state grant for $1.8 million to go to Chromebooks and televisions.
Okay. Okay, well, speaking of technology, how do you think technology actually correlates to student performance and achievement?
Well, I think that if teachers can augment the regular teaching and learning with the devices, then you can go in a really great direction. I think if it can be used to speak to the world, to self-publish, to do things like create robots, then you can do amazing things to transform education. But I just think we're not there yet because we're not comfortable.
Okay, so overall you think that technology is a tool and teachers, like great teachers, are what's really going to change learning?
Yes, absolutely.
So from an administrative standpoint, what are your thoughts on standardized testing as a way to determine a student's college preparedness? And what other factors do you think determine that?
I honestly think that standardized testing should be banned. It doesn't accurately assess anything. It only assesses a student's ability to spit things back. You know, they're not an indicator of your success in life. Take AP tests, it's very easy to train a student to do well. And the type of students that take those classes, they're very good at that type of learning. Being a globally and culturally aware citizen is much more important than test scores because test scores don't really prepare you for college. Things like time management, communication, and conversation are a much better way to do this. I think that there needs to be a greater focus on this by encouraging more sorts of projects and community service and things that will be able to fix the world.
So how do you actually measure the success of a student?
So at Brewster High School, we're evaluated on our graduation rate. That's it, just the graduation rate. So things like students' AP scores and SAT scores aren't really taken into account. It's only the graduation rate. So I think that a more successful way to measure the success would be where will you be in 5 years? If you ask that about a specific student, to see what their future looks like, what kind of person they become,
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time. So next up, we have a student from Brewster High School. Hello.
Hi.
So what do you think the budget is? And if you don't know what it is, what would you estimate it to be?
I assume the budget's around 12 million, maybe.
Okay. So what areas of do you think the budget is allocated to?
Probably anywhere between like classroom management, sports, and like any academic usage.
Okay. So from a student's perspective, do you think the Chromebooks have a difference in your learning?
Yeah, I think that's definitely had a positive impact. It helps us access information a lot easier. And even though there are like issues with it, definitely overall it's been beneficial.
Okay. So I imagine you're taking like SATs and ACTs, right? What are your thoughts on standardized testing as a way to measure students' college preparedness?
I don't think it's a good way to measure that just because tests like that are just gauging your memorization and less your knowledge of the actual material. It's pretty, like, if you just train yourself to memorize certain things, you could do pretty well in those, and that's just, it won't measure how ready you are to go to college in the real world.
Okay. So how would you actually measure the success of a student?
I think the best way to measure student success is, instead of looking at testing, to look at how they would work in things like discussions. Having different opportunities where they can use notes and be able to use all their resources shows just how they work better than testing, which is just memorizing.
Next up, we have a teacher from Brewster High School to speak to us today. Hi.
Hi.
What do you think the school budget is? And if you don't know it, what would you estimate it to be?
I don't really know what it is. I try not to pay attention to stuff like that, and I really don't think that estimating it would be a good idea. But I'm sure that it goes towards things like insurance, supplies, like for the classroom, food supplies, maintenance, and all sorts of stuff like that.
Okay. Fair enough. How do you think technology correlates with student performance and achievement?
I'm not really sure if I'm totally sold on this idea. I don't think that the results are in yet. For higher performing students, there's definitely a strong correlation, but for lower performing students, I don't think that we're there yet.
Okay. So you think it all really depends on the student and the student's motivation?
When they're using the technology, I think that it definitely could lead to a lot of cheating.
Yeah.
For example, when I have students collaborate, I find that sometimes it's one person doing all the work and the rest of them just taking credit. And it really shows on tests. It's really important to be able to do things with pen and paper, because that's how you're going to have to do it on the SAT and the ACT.
Okay. So speaking of SATs and ACTs, what are your thoughts on standardized testing as a way to determine students' college readiness?
I think that on one hand, from watching my own 3 kids go through the process, it does. You have kids who do poorly but have a better work ethic, go to really good schools, but you have kids who do better, like they have better grades, but they don't have any motivation.
What other factors do you think determine that?
Working outside of school is very helpful. I think that engaging in some kind of volunteer work is very important. I find that students who have experienced some kind of adversity tend to be more motivated. Illness, death, not being well off. I put a lot of emphasis on motivation. There's a lot there.
Mm-hmm. How do we actually measure the success of a student?
That's interesting. I find that some students do better than others on multiple choice, so I tend to focus more on writing skills. I value when students develop a strong sense of purpose. It's a lot about empathy and understanding. I feel that students that are very open to new ideas and learning will do the best when they come outside of high school. I value that more than students who are closed-minded.
So, what are the hardest things to teach students, or what do you hope to teach?
The ability to detect bias and point of view is one of the hardest things to get students to realize.
Mm-hmm.
We live in an era of globalization, and those are just some of the skills that we need to coexist in this society.
Do you think something is missing in school, or is there something that needs to be taught to students before they go out to the real world?
Everything is becoming the school's responsibility now.
Mm-hmm.
As common values such as the importance of religion are decreasing now, everyone's looking at the school to regulate how students behave.
Mm-hmm.
There's no code of conduct or set of guidelines that everyone can follow to see how to be kind and bullying. Technically there's one at our school, but people look at it like it's a joke.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be some sort of moral code.
Thank you. This was Oprah Winfrey reporting live on 60 Minutes. Catch me tomorrow morning on The View. Signing off, Whoopi Goldberg.
Stop.
Hello, this was Anderson Cooper.
No, you're not. No.
You're right, I'm not. I meant Oprah Winfrey.
I thought you were Whoopi Goldberg.
That too. I channel all the hosts.
Coexist.
Do you think?
Look, no, look.
Teleprompter.
Teleprompter.
Teleprompter, please.
Fancy.
Yes,
1, 2, 3. We don't need them to sing it. We can sing our own theme song. I have rhythm. Wait, how do you?